very warm welcome. Good afternoon to this fourth webinar in our series of 4 on understanding dyscalculia. Joining me today again are Louise Bain from East Ayrshire, Laura Scott from Glasgow Dyslexia Support Service, who's going to be doing the majority of the heavy lifting today on today's webinar. And then my colleague Maria as well, and myself, Iona, from Education Scotland. So you're all very welcome. We're very grateful for you joining us. Please do again introduce yourselves in the chat. If you have any questions during the session, again, please just pop them in the chat. That would be great. We are sharing on PowerPoint Live, so any of the links that you see you can click on, and we'll put the links in the chat as well. And we are recording the session, so please just be mindful of that as well. You are welcome to follow the MAS team and the East Ayrshire and Dyslexia Service Twitter accounts. Their addresses are on the screen as well. And just to say, there are still a number of people coming in, so we'll just try and let as many people in as we can. So yeah, just a reminder that this session is being recorded, but you are welcome to pop any questions in the chat and follow any links. So the title of this session is Sharing Practice, and really what today's session is going to be is a deep dive, mostly a deep dive into the use of Cuisenaire rods, and say Laura's going to be taking us through that and how they can support learners who've got difficulties in numeracy and maths for a number of reasons, but obviously particularly learners with dyscalculia. The aim of the series of webinars is really just to signpost resources and activities that support all learners, including those with dyscalculia. So definitely, although Cuisenaire rods can be used with all learners, we're really kind of doing a deep dive in how they can support learners with specific difficulties in numeracy and maths today. Just a reminder as well that the Scottish working definition of dyscalculia that was published last year is available alongside a number of resources that are there. The links to all of these are on the infamous Padlet that's on the next slide. The link to that's on the next slide. But just a couple of key pieces that support today is that learners with dyscalculia will definitely benefit from appropriate early identification support, planning and review, tailored support that meets their needs, actively encouraging the use of specific materials, including concrete materials and visual representations, and effective inclusive learning and teaching pedagogical approaches and environments. So really what we're trying to do today is illustrate this through the use of Cuisenaire rods, and that's what Laura's going to take you through. So one last little bit from me before we get to hand over to Laura is really just everything that you need for this professional learning series is on the professional learning webinar series Padlet. The link is on the screen just now. On there, you will find recordings of sessions 1 to 3, the slides from sessions 1 to 3, and also the reflective log from sessions 1 to 3, along with a whole host of other useful links, professional reading, the whole shebang. So you will find all that on the Padlet. There was a question earlier, can you share it? Absolutely, feel free to share this with colleagues. And the recording of today's session and the slides will go up once we've finalised all of that. So you will have the complete series there within the week. Probably we'll get all that up and running. So as I say, any other questions, just pop them in the chat as we go. But I'm delighted to hand over to Laura, who's going to go into Cuisenaire rods in a bit more detail. We hope you'll find that helpful. I am sharing the slides for Laura, so if there's a bit disconnect between Laura finishing and me moving on to the slides, do apologise about that. We'll try to make it as seamless as possible. So handing over to Laura now, I'm sure you'll enjoy this talk on an introduction to Cuisenaire rods.
Thanks, Iona. Thanks so much for coming along tonight, because I know at the end of term there's a lot going on within schools and reports and end of term things, so we really appreciate you coming along. In the last session, I said that I would do an introduction to this as the group had asked me to do that, so that's what I'll be doing this afternoon. So I'll put my camera off. I've not got the best reception, just to help with that as well. Okay, so as I said before, they're a great concrete material to support basically all learners, not just learners with dyscalculia, but they're particularly good for learners who are dyscalculic. I have had lots of light bulb moments with children using Cuisenaire rods, and we want learners to understand how to use the rods and interpret different types of concrete materials. I'm not saying that this is the only concrete material to use with children who have numeracy difficulties, as some things are better for other things, and some children have different preferences, but they are a particular favourite of mine. A lot of the suggested interventions that you'll see for dyscalculia will incorporate Cuisenaire rods in some way, so I thought it would be helpful to cover them as a strategy to support children with dyscalculia, and adults as well, and just learners generally. This will be a sort of snapshot, an introduction into how to use the rods. As they are so versatile, you could do a whole day's training on this. And I realise some of you on here this afternoon may have used them before or never seen them before, so I'm just going to start at the beginning of how you would introduce them. I normally would do this type of training face to face, as the power of the rods is in how tactile they are, and it can be quite satisfying to use them a bit like a jigsaw. I know some of you have spoken to, I've brought along some rods tonight, and others, if you don't have them, you could use the Relational Rods app by Mathies or the Cuisenaire Rods aspect on MathSpot, which is on the screen. Now, feel free just to sit back and learn and watch the visual. There's no pressure to do what I'm doing. It's just if you want to have a wee play about and try some of the things that I'm showing you. So, Cuisenaire rods were developed in 1931 by the Belgian primary teacher Georges Cuisenaire. They are used all over the world, and they were used a lot in the 1950s. And there's been a bit more of a resurgence in recent years due to bar modelling in Singapore maths. I have seen the rods sort of being thrown about the class at playtime, possibly in the back of cupboards gathering dust, or worse, and I was in a school where they were thrown in a skip. They are plastic, but the original ones are made of wood. Teachers have commented to me that they would like to know how to use them, they just don't know how. So hopefully after today's session, you'll feel a bit more confident in using them. The rods are a continuous material which help children to chunk number and move on from counting in ones. That's why they don't have the lines of demarcation on them, as they can help children get out of that counting trap. And instead of counting away at the beginning, away back to one, it sort of, in a way, sort of forces them into not counting all the way from one, or counting on. In some ways, the rods sort of bypass counting, as children look at the relationships first before counting. They put the rods end to end, side by side, and the children sort of see the relationships geometrically without counting. Noticing how easily children learned musical patterns, Cuisenaire designs the rods to represent specific mathematical intervals. He wanted them to look like keys in a piano. I'm sorry, I've just a message to turn up my volume. Is that?
Laura, I'm hearing you fine. So,
Is that okay? Am I okay just now?
You're all right, Laura. Absolutely fine.
Okay, right. Okay, so somebody can't hear anything. Maybe it's something to do.
Well, just again, if anybody's having issues, we'll be leaving and rejoining. Maria, could you maybe pop that in the chat? That would be great.
Okay. So some of the key concepts that can be developed are the ones on the screen. And even this week, I saw them being used for bar graphs. So that's something that I can add to the list as well. So you can see there are lots of ways that you can use them, and this is just some of them. And I'll touch in some areas today, and they can be used from nursery all the way to adults. Thank you. So why use them? They're an excellent way to teach learners about numbers and the relationships between numbers. They help children see the interconnectedness of mathematics, and they're often called relational rods. You might hear some people referring to them as trains as well. Several key concepts can be seen in the one visual, which I'll go on to later, and you'll see that. The use of the rods encourages learners to play, talk, question, think, scribble, draw, and just connect the learning. I'm a great believer that children have to hold the maths in their hands before they can hold it in their minds, and the rods offer this opportunity. And we know that play doesn't begin and end in early years. All children can explore and investigate. Adults like to do explore and investigate as well to learn. Children can freely draw and write what they have been learning about on, they can use the rods, put them in large sheets of paper, on whiteboards or on squared paper, or just using the rods on a desktop and using a whiteboard marker to annotate as well. The rods help teaching for understanding by supporting deeper levels of memory, aiding the development of mathematical scripts and visualisation, like what we spoke about last time with Professor Sharma, and how the importance of scripts and visualisation. The rods are very good for that. Just introducing a new concrete material can sort of offer a greater understanding of number relationships. Sometimes if you've had children or learners who have been struggling for a while, a sort of fresh resource can change things up a bit. Children can explore numbers using the rods through self-discovery and sort of make connections for themselves. And as I spoke about before with maths anxiety, they can help because they're self-corrective in a way. They don't have to be worrying about getting things wrong. If it fits or it doesn't, they can self-correct it themselves. And it gives the opportunity to listen to children's thinking and encourage them to think about metacognitive strategies. And they can help children with EAL to practice the language of maths and show their thinking visually. If they can't do it orally, they can use the rods to show what they're thinking. And rods can be used alongside sort of normal sort of storybooks or math storybooks. So whatever number concepts that are being developed in the story, you can show the numbers through using the rods alongside the story. So the learners have a sort of visual representation of the numbers being discussed while reading. The rods are metric. The white one is 1 centimetre long and the orange is 10 centimetres, and they go up in length 1 centimetre at a time. So the yellow, for example, is 5 centimetres. They are weighted with the also, so you can the white is 1 gram and the orange is 10 grams, etc. So this helps with explaining of equivalence and makes algebra a bit more fun. As you can see in the top right, you can sort of use scales with them as well in thinking about algebra and explaining equivalence. The children learn using the rods initially just thinking about colour and length, and then they move on to seeing their values of 1 to 10. The white can represent other numbers if you want, like the white could represent 5, as I said, that they're relational. But this can be a bit confusing for dyscalculic learners, and they're better sort of just sticking to white being 1. So this is an example of something that you could put up initially. And you could be saying, well, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So if you wouldn't mind doing that just now and in the chat, sort of putting in what you notice about that image and maybe some things about what you wonder. So there's somebody who's noticed right away his number 1 to 10. Great, it's like a staircase. It makes a staircase. Good. Good, it's mirrored and flipped. You can see pattern and symmetry. Yellow is half of orange. Yellow is a double. Yep, a double of, fits together. Yeah, that's fine, even just fits together nicely. The children will say things like that. Good contrast of colours, good. Good. So these are the kind of things that you would expect to get from the children, and you would investigate with these things with them, with what did you notice, what did you wonder, and it sort of gives you that starting point for investigating them. Makes a square, I can see as well. Great, these have been very good suggestions. So that's just an example of an image that you could put up with the children or the learners. When I'm saying children, it can be learners, it can be adults, just whatever stage who are struggling with their numeracy. Right, thank you. So the first thing I would get any learner to do, no matter what age or stage they're in, was to create a picture or build things with them, play with them, just give them the rods and they can do anything they want. well, within reason. And you could give them a topic, like you can see in the topic at the top left has been Christmas, and they've created Christmas images. The right has been a mini beast topic, and the bottom two, that is when I did it with teachers around St Andrew's Day, and they created some of their images. Like if we were together just now, because I'm dying for the summer to come, I'd be creating summer pictures. So you might have a sun, sunglasses, a sort of beach scene, or maybe a cocktail glass with cocktails and mocktails. So we would be creating all those images. And it seems quite abstract hearing it just now, but once you start to do it, it's not. So lots of free play. And you can see on these images that are in front of you, you could do estimation as well. If you say, right, okay, with the white one, how many do you think we would need of those to cover that rocket? Or you say, what do you notice anything about the crocodile here? You could say, well, how many white ones do you think are in we could fit alongside that dark green one? Or do you, and then you might notice, oh, there's two light green can fit alongside the dark green. So you're just sort of playing, creating pictures. They might be flat, they might be 3D, lots of free play. Now, there's example questions that you could be used while people are playing. It could be, well, what can you make? Can you tell me anything about the rods? Can I make it bigger? Can I make it smaller? Can you see a relationship? What about that pattern there? Have you discovered? How did you just things like those types of questions? And if say you were starting a topic about addition, you could say, well, what can we find out about addition using Cuisenaire rods? Thanks. So while it's good, I'm saying yes to ask questions to facilitate and scaffold the learning, the rods can also be used during play without questions. So they could be used for just to model language, or to show something, or maybe to suggest something, explain something further. Maybe there's something you want to demonstrate, explore, or you could use it as an opportunity just as a bit of encouragement, say something you like about what they did, or to remind them something, or just that you're narrating what they're doing and setting challenges. Investigation with Cuisenaire rods allows children to have ownership of their learning. It's important to allow children thinking time and wait, as I said before intervening in the learning and looking for those key learning opportunities. This is just an example of some work that was done. It was just using being able to think about letters and sounds and to create pictures with the rods as well. So if it may be an infant class, they could use the rods alongside thinking about their letters and letter shapes and things like that, and the letter sounds. So they create things that begin with A. They've got apple to A, aeroplane, alligator, different things. If you were doing, you could do an insect, igloo, things like that. Now, we know the importance of sorting and categorisation in maths, so you could be thinking about how can you sort the rods by colour? Can you sort them by length? What about the even numbers, the odd numbers, more than 5, less than 5? And a lot can be done just by putting the rods in and out of the box, that they get to be more familiar with the colour and the lengths and things like that. Now, you hope that through play, they might sort of do that staircase pattern that you were referring to within the chat. And it normally does. Somebody will do the staircase pattern. And there's lots of games to sort of imprint this staircase in their minds. And if we were working together today, we would play them with you. You want to have this sort of image in their head, and you want to have it out on display. You can get sort of big foam Cuisenaire rods as well, or magnetic, or you can print them off Twinkle as well, that they're very familiar with that staircase pattern and organised in length. And then you can think about, well, which rod is the biggest, which is the smallest, which one comes before or after a certain rod, and you're moving up and down the staircase, seeing the colours. Can you do it with your eyes closed? But you're agreeing on the names of the colours, and I'll come on to that shortly. So that's, you might be a way of getting them familiar with the staircases. You might take one of those rods away. You can see in this one, the black one has been taken away. So you could do ones where you take the rod away and you leave the space, and then you could do ones where you just push them together and they have to sort of work out which rod is missing, and it's sort of reinforcing that staircase pattern. You can do things like, can you find me a rod that's longer than the brown? Can you find me a rod that's shorter than the brown? Can you find one that's longer than the red? Or you might do feely bag activities where they have, this is actually quite hard when I tried this myself, where you put the rods in the bag and you say, well, can you find me a rod that is longer than a red? And you have to try and feel the length of it and pull it out. Or you might have one hidden in your hand and they have to ask questions and try and work out what it is. Is it longer than a yellow rod? Things like that. Guess the rod. Now, on the left here, I got this from Twinkle, and it's quite good because it's sort of measured and the learners can put the rods directly onto the picture. So they're learning about the rods and their relationships. You could also do symmetry with them, just simple symmetry, or a wee bit harder with rotational symmetry. Or what you could do is do a black line down the middle of a table, let's say with a whiteboard pen that they can rub off, and one partner does one side of the image and then the other partner has to make it symmetrical, something like that. Now we know through our previous webinars we've mentioned that dyscalculians find pattern very difficult at times. Not all dyscalculic learners, but some of them. So you could be putting out some patterns with the rods, and they could be either continuing the pattern through colouring it in on the paper, or just continuing it with putting the rods down. During the free play aspect, you will probably notice children sort of creating their own patterns. It's good to point out when they're sort of playing that they're creating a growing pattern, or what their sort of 3D shapes that they create and things. The rods are very good for equivalence because you can pick any rod and find other rods that pick together are the same length as the rod picked. So you can say, right, I want two rods that are the same length as the orange or the black, and put them down so they know, okay, like the purple and the dark green is the same. When I put them together, that's the same as the orange. Some people refer to these as trains. You might hear it depending on the age. Can you find me two trains? It's the same as the orange train. Now you can say make a mat with as many rods as you want that equal in length to the blue rod, so they're just as long as they're the same length and they're putting them in, they might start to do patterns or realise things, and there's lots of chat around that. And you've got, again, to make sure that you're keeping that staircase available for learners to refer to, and you're agreeing a code as a class or as a group, or everything if it's a one-to-one thing where this is Cuisenaire had this code where it was white, red, green, purple, yellow, dark green, black, tan, blue and orange. And you can see that there's 3 Bs, so he's sort of got the black, the blue and we've made brown, tan. It sounds quite complicated, but they do get used to it quite quickly. As long as you agree on it and keep using the same code. So through encouraging independent free mathematical writing, children can explore sort of the algebra of operations, and they can express discoveries for themselves. So you're not even talking about the numbers yet, and you can have them writing things like, well, okay, if you get a yellow and a yellow equals an orange, or a purple and a red equals a dark green. So that code, probably D could be a G there, but anyway, depends on the code you've decided. And it helps with maths anxiety because you're sort of taking the numbers away and you're just focusing on the colours. What 2 colours would be equal in length to this rod? And they're recording the colours that they found. Now this looks quite complex, but it's not, because all you're doing is recording the colours. Once you've got the rods out, in the top left you're just thinking, well, 2y, that's 2 yellow equals orange, or 3 red plus a purple equals orange, and the children can be doing this and creating their own, and then you can be thinking about the fractions to the right, and then at the bottom that's a sort of what is the missing colour, which when they've got the rods out it's very easy because they can just sort of put the rod into the missing place or take away something to be able to see what it is. You can do, because we're only thinking about colour and length at the moment, you could be thinking about asking true or false questions, like does a white and a red equal a green? Does a tan and a white equal an orange? Is this true or false what I'm saying? Things like that. Or you could have equations where they're having to work out what is the missing colour. So a red plus what colour gives you yellow? So they would have their red and their yellow and they'd be working out what is in that space. Okay, so now we've done lots of free play and we've talked a lot about the colour and the length. We've got the sort of staircase in our minds, And now we want to thinking about giving the rods a value, and obviously trying to elicit that from the children, that they're working that out. So you now want to look at sort of giving the values in the staircase as if white is 1. So you could say to the children, let's make sets of teeth, and if that's age appropriate, and they could get a pair of the same rods, the same colour, and then they're working out how many white rods is it equal in length to the whatever colour rod that they have. So they're creating sets of teeth depending on the age they are. And this way they're sort of finding the value of each rod, and they're sort of referring back to the staircase, and we think about the relationships between the numbers. So we're moving from the colour to the number. So we've got the rods in the staircase, and it's about teaching the learners the value of each rod. So if white is 1, can you show me what's 5? What's 9? And then you might say, well, what's 11? And then you would hope that they would maybe think, well, I could use an orange and a white. So we'd want to have it up so we could and then say, well, what's 12 or what's 15? You want to have the orange on the left, as that helps with sort of place value and getting confused with those teen numbers. Okay. And as I said before, dyscalculiates can find it hard to think about and another 1 or take away 1, whereas the staircase going up and down with your 1, going adding on each 1 each time and taking away 1 each time, it just helps with that and another 1 and taking away 1. There's some thinking around the colour of the rods. The Cuisenaire was supposed to be that the family of 3s, sort of on the same colour palette, 3, 6 and 9, and then the warm colours of 2, 6, 8 and 10, and then 1 white because it can go with any of the other rods, and 7 is sort of the only prime number that can't be doubled within the staircase, so that's why that was black. You can use them for doubling and halving, so you're finding pairs of rods that equal 1 single rod. What would you call one of these pairs? So it's very clear what double a number is, what half a number is. And then it's great for sort of doubles and near doubles, because they can see if it's just 1 short or just 1 more very, very clearly. I've written on them because you're not familiar with the values yet, some of you, just so you understand what I'm talking about. You can create an odd staircase, an even staircase. You can sort of go up in 2, down by 2. You can make staircases with other common differences, because we know that children struggle with another 1 and another 2 if they get dyscalculia. So it's quite hard to move past that until you've got another 1 and another 2, and this helps with that. You can use them for investigating odd and even numbers by saying, okay, if you put 2 odd lengths end to end, what is the length of... So if you put 2 odd lengths end to end, is a new length odd, or if you put 2 evens end to end, is a new length even. There's just lots of different ways you can think about investigating odd and even numbers. Cuisenaire rods are excellent for showing composition and decomposition of number. And you can think about, basically, that's what we would refer to in schools as like your number stories. How many different ways can you make the yellow rod with the 2 rods? And you want to be trying to get them to do it, repeating that staircase pattern within them, so that it develops that sort of automaticity of the pattern and helping them remember it. And that's just the number compositions from 6 to 8. And then you can very clearly see where I've sort of put that wee star, the commutative law, that the numbers then switch round. It's very clear visually, and it is putting the colour into number. You could also create these wee square grids where the children have to put it inside the rods, and then they can write them down. You can buy you can buy these commercially as well, like wee trays, and you fit them in, or you can make them and get the children to colour them. You could use them for Professor Sharma's 45 sight facts that they're creating, the different sight facts with the rods. Now, I've shown a bit of colouring in tonight's session, but I've just been wary of children sitting colouring for a long time. I just want them to be quickly colouring, not sort of that's the main thing in the learning, that they're sitting colouring for too long. This is that's basically the number compositions of 9 and 10, and then depending on age, you can download of, I think it's called Fun Learning Printables, where you can get you may have seen this before, we get a Humpty Dumpty house or a Three Little Pigs house, and you can sort of put your number stories within them. That's if you've got younger learners. And again, you just want to make sure that you're constantly emphasising the repeated staircase within the number compositions. And that's your teen staircase, so you'd hope that they would then go on to infer that that would be repeated again, and then you can repeat it again. And this is what in school you sometimes refer to as number families, where, as you can see, as I referred to at the start, different aspects of maths happening in the one visual, which helps with understanding of memory. So you can quite clearly see there that 4 add 5 is 9, 5 and 4 is 9. If I've got 9 and I take away the 5, I'm left with the 4 rod. And if I've got 9 and I take away the 4 rod, I'm left with the 5 rod. So it's lots going on there in the one visual. And this can be seen in the next visual as well. So you could also have halves in that and thirds as well in that image. And this is what I was meaning by sort of seeing different mathematical concepts and the interconnectedness of maths within the one visual. This is a simple visual. Obviously, you could do it with like 24 and things like that, and many 2s and 3s and things. I just wanted to show you it simply. You can put the rods, because they're metric, you can put them onto like centimetre squared paper and sort of draw them out, put the number stories beside it. Or you could be taking pictures of them with iPads and then annotating, or the children could be talking about what they're doing on the iPad as well. You could do, obviously, you could record adding 3 numbers. So obviously the black, that's 7. If I'm adding those, how would a mathematician record this? And then it could be just, you can see there somebody's writing down the different numbers that add to make 9. You could put a number in the middle where the children have to say all the different ways, like to make 15 I've got that's on this one, so that they're creating the number 15 and they're recording all the different ways that you can make the number 15. They're excellent for being able to see the difference, because it's easy, very clear to see, well, what's the difference between 10 and 5? You can very clearly see what it is, and then put the other rod in to check. It's effective for seeing your part whole models as well. You can be doing lots of work in relation to that. It's very good for bridging through 10, because the learner can see how many more they need to sort of get to 10, and it's scaffolded visually, and it's fitting like a jigsaw piece that can be self-corrected. I particularly like them for explaining bridging. Now you can use the rods with a ruler with a channel. You can buy these, or some rulers have channels, or you can just put them at the top of a ruler. Or if you've got lots of things you really have to measure from IKEA, IKEA has got paper ones as well. And there's lots of games you can play just by rolling a dice and things like that, and seeing who's the first one to get to 50 or something like that, and placing the rods in. This is the multiplication sort of area model, and the rods can very clearly see what the area model looks like using the rods. And coming up here, we've got the commutative law, where you can see clearly what it actually means. And then in the next slide, you can put them on top of each other, and then you could put that on top of a ruler, and then it's very clear that it's the same length, and this is the same answer. It's quite rewarding when it fits perfectly on top, and you can put them on top of each other to show that it's the same area. And then you can see clearly your square numbers. And it's like facts like about 24. You could do this with other ones, it's just to give you an example. And then in the next slide you can see I put them on top of each other to see like the multiplication floors, to see if they fit. They're good for fractions as well. You can say, can you show me a third of a rod? And then the children or the learners have to try and work that out, and they're great for explaining equivalent fractions as well. can make up riddles, or you put the riddle up and the children have to make up their own riddles, where you say, well, if I've got the yellow rod in my head, what is a half? And they can have the rods out and doing it. Sorry, if the yellow rod is a half, what is the whole? Or if the blue rod is a whole, what is a third? And when they've got the rods out, it's very clear to them what it is, and they can practice and put it in and see what they think and make their own riddles. Now, you could get them to make faces. You can say 100 face or a 50 face, where they put it out, the rods first on like a ruler to 100, pick the rods they want, or differentiate it, that if they're more able, they could be saying, right, okay, well, I want you to make a 100 face, or you could say, I want you to make a 50 face, or everybody in the class could be making different faces, and then you're estimating whose is the largest value, whose is the smallest value. It could be like a gallery walk type thing. So I've mentioned some of these resources throughout. The top left, you can get like the magnetic ones that you sort of stick to the board, and then there's the trays where you could put in, that's in the middle top, where you could put in your number compositions, and then you've got your foam rods and you've got your weighted scales, and then that's what they actually look like in the middle when you buy them in a pack, or you can get them in Amazon, things like that as well. And that's the other thing, that's the ruler. Now, there's different apps that mentioned the relational rods by Matthews. That Braining Camp one's actually sort of online educational software that you have to pay for, but you can use them on Enrich, MathSpot, Pinterest and Twinkle. I've got lots of ideas. The only thing I would say is to watch the correct colours, because sometimes in Twinkle they maybe introduce a blue or something, but that can be easily sorted as long as you just sort of, you can cut it out and stick it on top of them. Most of them are okay, but there's some that sort of brings in a blue. Now, as I said, they can be used from early years to adult, and ATM have got a booklet on it, and Ronit Bird has got lots of videos online, and she's got here a sort of wee ebook that's good. So just have a go and play and see what your learners do, and you can discover and see what happens together. And if you do use them, could you please sort of basically tag us, because I genuinely would be interested to see what you do with the rods. So if you put on the next slide, that's our Twitter account. I'm interested to see what you do with them. So if you take pictures of any creations, any light bulb moments, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, just simple is good. I would love to see what you do with them. It doesn't matter if it's this session or next session. It's a good way for using Cuisenaire rods to be able to sort of share ideas with them. So I'll pass you back on to Louise just now, who's going to talk through some interventions and resources, I think. So thank you.
Maybe just
We'll pause there for a second, if that's all right. Yeah, we'll just pause there.
Karen, I think you had your hands up. I'm not sure if you had a question. If you could maybe pop your question in the chat. I think this is a really good opportunity. Maybe have you got any questions specifically for Laura about the Cuisenaire rods? I will just say again that Laura's slides, I know we went through lots of examples very, very quickly. The video is going to be on the Padlet. Her slides are on the Padlet as well, just so that you can go back and have a wee look and remind yourself about what some of the different activities and ideas and mathematical concepts were. But if you've got any particular questions for Laura, could you just pop them in the chat just now? And we'll give that a minute or so.
Point out that these are only a sort of suggested things. The learners that you're working with will come up with their own ideas, and it's just the way these things, the way the rods work, that you'll find that there'll be loads of other stuff that I've not talked about that they will do on their just by themselves.
And I think it would also be good, Laura, just building up on that as people have used them and they've had successes with them, or the learners have, experienced some impact with them. Pop it in the chat. It's always good for us to hear that and for us to share that more widely. So anything that's resonated with you, or indeed if you're comfortable using them, you've been using them for a while, let us hear about it.
I'm just about to pop the link to the Padlet in the chat again, so you should be able to, Stephanie, thank you very much. I got there ahead of us. There's a link in the chat to the Padlet, or I'm just going to quickly scoot back to the slide. You can click on you should be able to click on that slide, and if you go there, maybe add it to your favourites, or just or save the link somewhere so that you can get back to it. And as Louise said earlier, we are going to keep the Padlet open pretty much indefinitely, or we may well we may well refresh and just tidy it up a little bit. But you're certainly more than welcome to share it. And if you are aware of any particularly good sites or links that's related to what we've got on there, in particular for today, anything that you spotted was really great resources around Cuisenaire rods, please do drop us a message with them, and we can either add them in individually, or what we might do is, if we get quite a lot of them, we'll maybe put them together in a suggested resources file and just add that to the Padlet if we've got quite a lot of them. So just a reminder of our email address. Maybe Maria, you could pop our email address in the chat, that would be great. And if you just drop us a line with any suggested resources. I'm just interested to know, maybe you could do it by reaction, or just popping in the chat. Are you familiar with using Cuisenaire rods? Have you had success, or is it something that's new to you? So maybe you could do, you can react on your tools. You can maybe react with a thumbs up if you use Cuisenaire rods already, or you could do a wow, I suppose, surprise face if you don't. So I'm interested to see. We've got a mixture. We've got some thumbs up. We've got some surprise faces, so and then a number of folks saying seen but never used. So I mean,
although you're right, Ione, a lot of these are like, you would go into maths cupboards. I went into a maths cupboard the other day there, and they were there in a box. And I actually texted Laura a few weeks ago because I had bought my own little pack for at home, and it came in a beautiful little box. I saw it in schools, so the kids have their own little individual box with them, and they're really, really good. But I can't seem to get the source for PCOS where to get them bought, so I bought a set for myself to use with children. But yeah, they seem to just be in boxes and cupboards and like storing dust on them. But as Laura has explained, it's such a valuable resource that we can still use. As well as we've got other resources, but we're best not to be throwing out these ones. I remember using them when I was at school, but why should we be reinventing wheels when these resources are great and they've worked well?
Yeah, and just a reminder that if you are wanting to play about with them, there is the digital version there on various digital versions, but certainly MathSpot and Enrich have them. That enables you to kind of just have a think about how you could be working together through concepts as well. So please do, the link is there on the screen as well if you wanted to have a wee a play with them. And see, there's somebody's managed to rescue some for a skip, so excellent. I'm glad you managed to do that.
I saw a really good thing on from somebody, I think it might have been on one of the Facebook website, I think it might have been Fix It Math, which are really, really good, in the Dyscalculia network, and it was using them alongside the Numicon channels, and it was for rounding, and that's what I used it for with the young learner I'm working with at the moment, and she could visually see straight away. Like, we did it quite, scaffolded it through, so she was putting in the numbers, and then she could see whether it was closer to which 10, and it was that, as you said, Laura, those light bulb moments, it just worked for her. And then by the end of the session, she was rounding no problem because she had a great visual in her head. So good.
So I think there's just been huge numbers of ideas there. There's a question there, Laura, maybe you could come in with this. Do you recommend using the official Cuisenaire rods rather than the copycats?
I would just use the ones, yes, that have got the sort of the traditional colours, and then the ones without the demarcation as well, because it's about trying to get the children to stop counting. Do you know, that way, it sounds as if I'm being mean, but there's lots of other resources that you can use for that. And you can still count with them using your white ones and things like that, but it just helps children get out of that counting trap.
I think that's a great point. I hope that's answered the question that's there. Great. Laura, thank you so much for that. Just fascinating ideas at umpteen different levels as well. So it's not something that's just for the tiny tots.
No.
It's or some older learners at early stages.
You can do Pythagorean triples with them, and I do believe there is a group who meet online and they have, I think, certain alcoholic drinks and think about different ways that they can use the rods. I'm not quite there yet, but there's a lot. You can be used from you can be used in the nursery all the way up to adults, and then thinking about your really things that are probably over my head to a degree with them as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Laura. And again, please do, if you think of any questions during the remainder of the session, please just pop them in the chat, and we'll have another we'll drop back together towards the end. We've got, I'm just going to hand over now to Louise, who's going to just talk about a few more intervention ideas. I know we've mentioned some interventions in previous sessions as well. And then at the end, we're going to get a chance to have a bit of a reflection all together and we're going to ask you for a bit of input about moving forward as well. So a quick handover to Louise, who's going to talk about some intervention ideas.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk very, very briefly. Iona and I had an awful lot more planned for tonight. We had lots of other resources we thought we could talk about, but we were just quite conscious that with it being the last session, that we felt that we really, as Iona said, we want to really just get your ideas. It's an opportunity really to recap a lot, because I know that it has been an awful lot over the last few sessions to take on board. So what we're going to do is hold fire with those other ideas that we had, and we're going to put them into next session. So all I really wanted to do was just have a little chat to you about some possible intervention ideas that you might use for not just young people who have dyscalculia, but again, they could be used for our young people who are struggling. So I've just got a few ideas that I've found that have been quite helpful. So I think, first of all, the most important resource is yourself. And during the lockdown, I had put together an intervention that I then shared with my team, and it's really kind of based on the Highland Council, New Zealand Maths Recovery. As I say, it's a mixture of all of these together, and pulling this together so that it could be ideally for, as I've said here, a one-to-one or a small group intervention. Hopefully having the young people about half an hour twice a week. And what the most important thing that I've found is that we actually have, and you'll see a kind of rough planner there, we have activities coming from 3 to 4 different areas. The first area that I have is within that forward and backwards counting. It's so vital, as we've spoke about previously. The young ones that I'm just starting to work with at the moment, I've got some difficulties with P2s, and I've got difficulties with subtraction. And when I then drilled down a bit further, it was the backward counting that was the main difficulty. It wasn't the concept. So I always would do that as a kind of warm-up game, where we do either the forwards or the backwards counting. And what is really, really good here is that you could be doing counting. I was speaking with Iona and Maria earlier on. I can be doing counting up to 1,000 with pupils. But then when I move on to then the next section, that numeral identification, we could be working within hundreds or tens and ones, etc. So within that next section, I'm looking at place value, I'm looking at ordering and sequencing, number formation, writing numerals as well. And then I have the kind of 2 sections down the bottom, which is calculations, and then I've got it's more that kind of number families as such, or relationships. So that could be where you've got your doubles, your number bonds, etc. But as I said, I would have a lesson, any lesson that I do with my young people, I would have an activity coming from either each of the boxes, or at least having forward or backward number counting, or both. Something to do with numeral identification, ordering, sequencing, and then possibly either calculations and that kind of number relationships, because again, they can make kind of a bit of crossovers there. And I found it to be really, really helpful, and I've put together for my team a support pack, so that's got ideas for each of the different levels. And thinking back to those principles that we were talking about last time, the fact that we have the progression and making sure that we're breaking these concepts down, I've actually taken each individual benchmark and then broken them down into tiny, tiny individual steps. And again, it's all within our support pack, which I'm happy to put onto the Padlet. It's a work in progress. We're constantly adding to it because, as I say, it was mostly conceptual Yeah, I'm happy to share it. I've spoken with my line manager this afternoon, and she's happy for us to share that. And what we're actually putting together at the moment is that it's more resource based. I delivered to my team along with my working party in February, and we spoke about some key resources, and a bit like Laura, like the versatility of these resources, and then we're pulling these into a resource pack, so that will hopefully be ready about Christmas time. So the intervention, it says first level numeracy pack, but it can be used from the early level because you can just tease back. The activities are all there, and it's all activities that you'll already know, but sometimes when you're trying to perhaps pull together an intervention like this, you think, oh, where do I go next, or I'll need another idea from that. So it's just really a bank of ideas to get people started as well. The next one that I've got is, these are just some great books that you could be using, again, in line with your own intervention. As I said, the structure that I've gone over there is a structure which I've used, and it's been tested, and I really, really enjoyed it, and the kids have responded well to it. But these are books, again, that you could be using to get some ideas from. So the green book, the teaching number one, that's the mass recovery book, which is mostly kind of designed for that one-to-one, or you could use it with small groups. And then you've got your teaching number in the classroom, that's more class-based activities, and it's focusing in all the different key skills that I'd mentioned a second ago. And the Dyscalculia solution book, Iona, this is one which Laura introduced me to, and also the Dyscalculia Network, and it's by Jane Emerson and Patricia Babty, and it's a follow-on from the assessment book, which I've gone over and spoke to you about before. And what this book will do, will actually link in and give you activities, again, linked in with the assessment. So if you couldn't do a particular skill, here's some ideas and activities. But again, these are just a bank of resources. And as I said a second ago, you are the most important resource, as well as your manipulatives, but you're the important resource. And I tend to have these books, and I pull from loads of different ideas, which suitable for my individuals. The next resource which I have is the number box, which has been created by the people who made the 5-minute box for literacy. The only thing that you'll have with this, though, is there is no assessment tool for it, and it can be a little bit vague. But what we have done in our authority is we put together an assessment tool that can be used for this. So I forgot to say, this could be used by classroom assistants, or the ideas could potentially be used by teachers as well, but it's predominantly for classroom assistants, and it's a universal support which we have within our authority. So we put together an assessment that could be used by the classroom assistants in order to identify a pathway, and then all the activities as such are within the actual number box. And again, we've adapted our classroom assistants, as they've been using the resource, they've gone and pulled together like a bank of their own activities and things that they've actually pulled together as well. So again, I can share that on the Padlet as well. And then lastly, these books here are fabulous. I'm currently using, with the wee one I've always been speaking about in our training, the Power of Two. With her. So the +1 is predominantly focusing on numbers to 10 and its number bonds as such. Times tables, it really is self-explanatory. Perform with time, you're looking at time. And then the Power of 2 is taking you into the kind of more complex concepts like addition, subtraction, rounding, etc. And if you're familiar with toe by toe, it's a very similar structure to that. So what you've got is you've got your young person who's been asked a series of questions, and then once they get 3 ticks in a row, then that part is secure. What I would put as a note of caution with these, that I use these as a structure, and I actually then, like, I look ahead, I say the next bit I'm going to be looking at is rounding. So I do my teaching input on the rounding, we use a manipulative, we do the pictorial, and then I would use the book as the follow-up part. So I'm actually using that as my consolidation, and then it can be used, which I've been doing successfully. I can send it home as well, so that there's that home link work as well. So they are really good resources, again, and they could probably be used again as a classroom assistant as well, because there are a lot of details about how you would teach particular concepts. But I think from a teaching point of view, I tend to use them as the kind of consolidation, and I use it as a structure for my teaching and learning and teaching. And I think that's me, Iona. Yep, it is so. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Louise. I know it's really useful for everybody to hear what's being used in authorities and what's working well. So again, these are the kind of things that we would really like you to share, that we can share more widely with the community. Again, these are things that we can pop on the Padlet in recommended interventions that people use. So please do share your ideas with us if you've used anything that you have found particularly helpful. We put together the reflective log for this for this particular webinar. I know some of you have already put things in the chat, but you know, your observations about using Cuisenaire rods. So I've just spotted the extra question mark on that slide for no apparent reason, so apologies for that. Just wondering what resonated with you particularly around Cuisenaire rods, and thinking about how you can incorporate the use of these into your practice. If you have been attending the earlier sessions and you have had kept your reflective log up to date, there either will be or is already, I can't remember if I've put it on the Padlet or not, the reflective questions for today. But we are interested in really what your main takeaway is, so feel free to really pop that in the chat today about what your main takeaway is, either from today or from the previous sessions. And we do go back and read the chat, and I think it is interesting for other people who are here to see what's the main thing that people are taking away. And I think that's a great comment from Miss McLaughlin there. I love not using numbers to begin with and really thinking. I think that's come across clearly in what Laura said, is to help learners move away from counting in ones and being able to think about, say, the relationships between numbers without always resorting back to ones is great, and how you can get familiarity with the concept of different sizes from the very earliest of stages as well.
And it helps with maths anxiety as well. If you've had a learner who's just not wanting to look at numbers, talk about numbers anymore, we'll just think about the colours and the lengths and things.
So a few things here. Originally feeling lost with Dyscalculia, this has really shown me good ideas. That's great. Delighted to see that. Important to build in time for children to explore their resources and make their own observations. I think that's a great point as well.
Definitely.
Hands-on aspect of using the rods, nice change from digital. Yep. Using of layering, multiplication floors, that's resonated there.
There's something quite satisfying about doing that. I don't know if it's just me, but you can tweet me and tell me if you've got the experience, the same thing.
Help address many of the difficulties that are coming across. I like how they're so versatile, the rods, the multi-sensory and play aspect. They're not so scary. There's a couple of, I think there's a degree of nervousness about using the rods.
Just go for it.
There's a question there, Louise, that you might want to answer. It's about assessments. You might need to scroll up a little bit, but it's about the idea of which assessments.
Yeah, I think, assessment-wise, it depends on your pupils that you have, the age and the stage. I actually met with somebody who's on the chat tonight. So if you want to even just get in touch with me directly, and I'm happy to have a chat with you about assessments, and Laura, I'm sure as well, assessments that we use, but it really depends on the age, the stage, the developmentally where the young people are. It's not a case of you use one assessment. It depends on the individual. Yeah, there certainly isn't one size fits all. And even using like the Steve Chin, we would only recommend that for older children. Things like the Babbitt book as well, there's aspects of that where we would use it for certain, we would maybe step in and out of it. So it really does depend. And I think having a bank of assessments available is really the most important thing to have. The GL screener I spoke about before, we use it within our authority at the moment, but it's because there are the two aspects of it, which was the supertising and the number sense, that we didn't have an alternative for. But however, with MathSpot, now being able to use MathSpot, and the dots are obviously moving, and you can use that as an assessment tool. But I've developed, as I've shared it before, the visual representation assessment where you're flashing the dots. And then I've also just developed a magnitude assessment, which I'd shared with the team as well. And it looks at that kind of number sense again, and is looking at the size and the comparisons. So that's now just going for quality assurance, and has just been shared with my own team within East Ayrshire last week at the in-service day. So it does really it varies, doesn't it, Laura? It depends on the individual child. And I think that's why when you're thinking about the raising concern form that Laura spoke about a couple of sessions ago, it's finding out what that young person's their most difficulties are and using the checklist, and then using that then to say, well, what evidence do we already currently have within the classroom? What evidence do we still need? So, but as I say, I'm happy to let me email. I'm happy to, over the next couple of weeks, if you want to have a Teams chat, and we can go through some things.
I think there's going to be a bit of a run around the school and in the cupboards and doing an audit tomorrow in the next remaining few weeks, looking for dusting off the Cuisenaire rods. Yes, that's great, because now people feel confident that they can go and bring them out and have a wee go, and that's what we're asking, is just to have a wee go, have a play.
Mm-hmm. We would just like to take, we finished a little bit earlier than normal just because we've come to the end of our 4 sessions, but I think we as a team have really discovered that we could kind of talk about this and ad infinitum, but really we are hugely grateful to Louise from East Ayrshire and Laura from Glasgow City for supporting this series. They have done an absolute power of work on top of their day jobs to come and support this series. Absolutely phenomenal. We are also really keen to hear from other local authorities who, if you are keen and willing to share your stories of supporting learners with difficulties in numeracy and maths, and your top tips and your experiences. So if you have a story to share and you would like to take part, even just a small 5-10 minute slot in a future webinar, please do get in touch with us, because we would really like to share practice more widely. And we do have some colleagues from East and Bartonshire who hopefully are going to do that. But please do come to us with some suggestions. It would be great. Today we've taken a deep dive into the use of Cuisenaire rods, because I think, as it's come across in the chat, that a number of people were a bit nervous about using them or slightly unfamiliar with using Cuisenaire rods. So I can see that has been really helpful to people, so that's great. But are there any other deep dives that you think next session it would be worth going into? We've had a suggestion that maybe Reckon-Recs would be useful. Because maybe not all schools are familiar with it, or not all practitioners are familiar with using Reckon-Recs. So that was one example that we're going to look into. Do you have any suggestions for others? Deep dives. Another suggestion is possibly taking a thread in the curriculum, for example, addition and subtraction, and really looking at it carefully through the lens of learners that are struggling with a particular, who are struggling with with numeracy maths. How can we really support them through their learning in a particular strand? So that's another option. Be interested to hear again about whether you feel that would be useful. So any other logical next steps we can look at next year? Feel free to pop your ideas in the chat, or we also have the evaluation. If you drop us an email, the link to our email is on the screen there. Please